Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We are now 2 months in on the Switch 2's release, and not a lot of major games out for it, so I kind of wanted to start typing up a list and wanted to do like a 2-month recap, and if I am happy with the $450 I spent, and things like that, just kind of talking about my experience with the Switch 2 for 2 months, the 2 Switch 2 games I've owned so far, both being Nintendo games, and, you know, just kind of thoughts on key cards and things like that, just kind of a recap thing. And I guess to not bury the lead, I'm happy with my purchase of the Switch 2. I've been, with the kind of Switch 2 coming out and the tail end of the Switch, I did have some new games for it, like Dragon Quest 3, Suikoden 1 and 2. I know those are like new retro games, but games that I played the first Suikoden, never played the second Suikoden back in the day, never touched the Dragon Quest game before Dragon Quest 3. So kind of new games to me, basically. And with Suikoden, it's been like 20 plus years, almost 30 years since I played it. So, but I found myself not playing a lot of Switch in handheld, not since I got my Legion Go. Kind of like I wasn't playing my Switch as much in handheld. When I play it, I play it on the TV with certain games, just because it felt like an 8-year-old device at that point. So one thing, you know, just again, I've got them both right here just to kind of compare the two. Let me hold the Switch one a little bit better, just to kind of compare the two, like much bigger, and I'll turn them on in a second, and much brighter screens. Let me kick these on just to kind of a comparison, because the screen is so much better on the Switch 2. And just started back up on Final Fantasy VI, but I mean, you can just kind of see, just this screen looks so much nicer for one. Let me turn those off so no background noise, kind of thing like that. And just the form factor, it's bigger screen, as you can see. One thing that I really like are the Joy-Cons, just the way they stick on there. Like that's firm. Like, I'm putting pressure on there. I'm not gonna put a ton of pressure on there because I'm not trying to break it. But I mean, it's not bending. You can kind of see, like, you got a lot more wiggle with the slide Joy-Cons, and they also don't come off as easy as that. I do like that click in place though. So just I think I did a short on this a while ago when it came out. I gotta just get the smudges off my screen protector, but this just feels more premium. Like, I feel more comfortable because I've got bigger hands. Playing this in handheld mode, just sitting on the couch. In case you're new to the channel, my wife is almost 8 months pregnant, so I don't get a lot of time in the game room if I'm not filming something. I'm hanging out with her and the boys and the dogs, because we also got a new puppy. I think I mentioned that too on the channel. The new puppy Pickle was in my DK short. So I'm down in the family room a lot, so I'm doing more handheld gaming than I have been recently. And so just having the nicer screen, the bigger screen, the more premium feel has been a source of joy for me with my newfound existence with more handheld gaming than big screen TV monitor gaming that I normally do. So I'm really enjoying that. And also, it was kind of funny, a buddy of mine asked if I was going to give my Switch 2 to the 4-year-old when I got, or the Switch 1 to my 4-year-old when I got the Switch 2, and I was like, no, I'm going to just put it up on my shelf as almost like a trophy piece, like my other Nintendo systems you can see over my right shoulder, or, you know, like the GameCube, the Super Nintendo's right there, and things like that. And I was just going to have this up on the shelf just because I have all the Nintendo consoles. But Bowie, now at 4.5, he is really into gaming. Like, he's watching people, not like actual live streams, but the recordings of live streams of people playing Mario Wonder and Mario Kart now on YouTube. So he wants to play those games himself. So he doesn't own my Switch 1, but I have let him play it to play those games. And he's enjoying it. He's having a lot of fun doing it. And like, him and I will sit on the couch after dinner, and, you know, he'll have his milk. I'll have probably a soda or my own milk. And we'll just be sitting there next to each other playing our Switch games. I'm playing Final Fantasy VI right now. He's going between Mario Kart and Mario Wonder. So that's kind of a fun bonding experience. One detriment to the Switch is the lack of I wouldn't even say lack of exclusive games, because exclusive games, well, we know Nintendo games are going to stay exclusive, but exclusive games are kind of going the way of the dodo. We've had Xbox games up here on the PlayStation, and now Helldivers is coming out for the Xbox Series X. So I don't want to say lack of exclusive games for the Nintendo Switch. I should say lack of new games for the Nintendo Switch. I think right now the only new release games that haven't been out already on other systems for at least a month or so have just been the exclusive, has just been Mario Kart and Donkey Kong. And where Mario Kart's kind of Mario Kart, it's doing its own thing with the open world, and I can say Bowie loves the open world. Him and I will drive around the open world. And now he's actually gotten pretty decent at it, that he does races, and he's come in first place a couple times on the 50cc circuit, so I'm kind of proud of him there. But so Mario Kart's kind of Mario Kart. It hasn't been my thing really since the N64 couch battle and couch racing with my friends, as opposed to doing it online kind of thing. But Donkey Kong Bonanza, wow, that's a fun game. That game is phenomenal. You can check out my short where I give it a review, but spoiler, it's a definite buy. If you've got a Switch 2 and you want something to play, especially if you enjoy 3D platformers, it's up there as one of my favorites. I always like to say Mario 64 is still the gold standard, but for me it's still my favorite 3D platform game. I do like Odyssey and Sunshine and Galaxy, but Donkey Kong Bonanza is just so much fun. In these games, I don't like to go off the beaten path. I like to play through them, and if I find a side thing to do that might be a little fun, or collect, in the case of Mario Odyssey, moons, in the case of Donkey Kong Bonanza, more bananas, I do that. But I found myself with Bonanza collecting more side bananas, because you basically beat the bosses, go to the next level kind of platformer thing. It's not a collectathon where, you have to collect so many bananas to go to the next level, like you did with Mario Odyssey, where you have to collect so many moons to power your ship to go to the next planet, city, yeah, next city, because you just stayed in the world. The only time you left the planet was to go to the moon. So you don't have to do that. The bananas, they act as you collect, I think, 5 bananas, you get a stat point, so you can, RPG elements, boost your life, boost your health, strength, things like that. So you don't have to collect them. But I found myself not even collecting them for the stat points, but because they were there. And I don't really get that sensation with collectathons. I won't go out of my way to collect things that don't get me to the next level. But here I found myself beating in the ground. If I would do the little slap, that gave you kind of a radar thing, and I'd see a banana underground, I'd go dig for that banana. And if I couldn't dig straight down to it, I had to figure out a way to get to it. I found myself trying to figure out a way to get to that banana. So it's just the fun exploration of it. So as far as new games, exclusive games, Donkey Kong Bonanza is definitely worth it. And I already mentioned the larger screen. It's not an OLED screen, but what I learned from my Legion Go, you don't need OLED to have a really nice screen. And this is a really nice premium looking screen. I'll pop it back on again. You can just see that really clearly on the camera, and you can see some fingerprint smudges too. But just the vibrant colors, everything comes through. There's no glare there. You can see the reflection of the LED lights, but you're not getting a big reflection off my monitor or anything like that. And it's just a really nice screen that is easy on the eyes. It's not overly bright. You can play it in dim or bright settings. I've never had a problem with it. I've seen shorts of people playing it outside in direct sunlight. I haven't tested that because it's summer and I don't want to be in direct sunlight. What psychopath is in direct sunlight? I almost had a chance to do it. Went to the beach during the summer, but it was so windy. I was like, I ain't getting sand in my Switch. You're just gonna stay in the car, or actually, it stayed in my book bag because I wasn't gonna leave it in the car. Kind of thing. So it works perfectly fine when I'm out on my patio, because generally if I'm on my patio, I'm in the shade, because again, summer, I'm not going to be in direct sunlight if I don't have to be, kind of thing. So I've just played it all around the house. Great great in light, like natural lighting, great in overhead lighting, great in the dark, doesn't hurt my eyes at all, and I can relax on the couch with the family, with dogs, and play it and enjoy myself. I talked about the Joy-Cons. When they showed these off, just how, like, there's not a lot of space there. I was really worried. Like, I was thinking to myself, I was like, I kind of wish this was thicker, because I felt like when it was in there, it was not gonna be on there well. And there's a tiny bit of give, but when I'm holding it with two hands playing, like I've got my fingers resting here and my fingers resting back here, my hands on the joystick, I'm not feeling bend. Where with my Switch 1, I would feel a little bit of a bend. Like sometimes I'd be like in a really tense gaming situation, I was like, oh, I can't grip this as tight as, like, not necessarily I want to, but can't grip it like tight because I'm feeling I'm going to break the Joy-Cons. So again, an upgrade there. And I know a lot of people saying like, oh, it's just an upgrade to the Switch 1. That's kind of what we wanted. A lot of people, I've seen a couple videos talking about how Nintendo, when they're at their best, has always been innovated. And you can see that with the Wii. I mean, the Wii U was innovated, and it sold like dog shit. The DS innovated. The Game Boy innovated. They all sold well. The Nintendo, the original NES, the original Famicom, that was just a more powerful video game system. Again, Nintendo didn't really have a video home console system. They did have the TV game 15, but that wasn't kind of the same thing. It was just like more powerful than Atari, and that sold like gangbusters. The Super Nintendo, the best-selling console of that generation, again, just a more powerful Nintendo kind of thing. The N64, if they had the more third-party support, because it was more powerful than the PlayStation, I feel it probably would have outsold the PlayStation. But the PlayStation had more games. You had Metal Gear, you had Final Fantasy Jump Ship, and Final Fantasy Jump Ship at the worst possible time for Nintendo to jump ship, because 6 in Japan, 3 in the US really caught fire, especially in the US, kind of set the tone for JRPGs in the US. That was like the first big JRPG hit, and then it went into Chrono Trigger and things like that. And then we got Final Fantasy 7, which confused a lot of us because we're like, the last Final Fantasy was 3, how are we at 7? Kind of thing. So then Nintendo, they were second and third place, kind of thing, until the Wii came out. And a lot of people like to debate who won that generation, Xbox 360 or PlayStation 3. It's like the Wii won that generation. Doesn't matter if it wasn't as powerful. A lot of people only owned a Wii. They bought a Wii and they didn't get another video game system. So whenever systems are out at the same time, they're competing. It doesn't matter if they play the same games or have the same graphics. In my mind, they're competing because a lot of people don't have money for multiple systems. So if they buy a Wii or if they buy a Switch, they're not buying an Xbox. They're not no one's buying an Xbox, but they're not buying a PS5 sometimes. So it is direct competition in my mind. But yeah, so it's like, oh, that was innovative. And that's where people have gotten this notion, because the DS was innovative. That's why it sold so much. No, the DS had Pokemon. Nintendo's handhelds have always dominated because they've always had Pokemon. Doesn't matter with the innovations, the graphics, or anything like that. The Game Boy lasted for years, and then the Game Boy Advance was just the more powerful Game Boy, and the Game Boy Advance sold like gangbusters. The DS did so well because of Pokemon, and because it came out in the Wii generation, and it kind of got those casuals, those people who bought a Wii. They're like, oh, I'll get a DS too, because I can read with it, because it opens like a book. So it's kind of one of those things. And then the Wii U was innovated, and it didn't sell well. And then the Switch was definitely innovative, but it's because it was a handheld and a home console is why it did so well, and it had great games. And then so my thought process with like, oh, well, it's not innovating. Honestly, and maybe I'm not a creative game designer, but where do you go to innovate from there? You took the home console and, you made this dockable. Before the Switch, there was nothing like that. And so it's like, where do you go from there? Sometimes, where you get a PS5 Pro or an Xbox, well, there's no Xbox Pro. Sometimes your next console is just a more powerful console, and that's fine. And it's well on its way to having the best launch. I think it already eclipsed that, having the best launch ever for a system. So they did something right, especially having a lot of stock on hand for the launch window, so people could get one if they wanted one. So that's just kind of my thought on that. It's kind of like, where do you innovate from there, from the Switch, like handheld that can also be a home console. And there could be innovations that you could do, but they might not be affordable. And also, kind of going back to complain about no OLED for this one. Well, you need a mid-range refresh anyways, but also Nintendo doesn't use their consoles as a loss leader. They never have. They've always made money off their consoles. Doesn't matter how small or big the margins are. They've always profited off there, where Sony and Microsoft, just to get the system in the house, they'll take a loss on it. Nintendo doesn't do that. So given that we paid $450 for the base Switch, $500 if you got the bundle, so it begs the question, what was the cost of the Switch 2 for them to manufacture? And if they did put an OLED on there, we might have been looking base system $500, $550. So they didn't want to charge that much, so they didn't put an OLED in there. And you could say, well, they could take a loss on it. Well, Nintendo's never done that. Why would, when they've got finance guys in charge of the company now, why would they do that now? Kind of thing like that. So, and again, like I said, the screen is really nice. I don't need the OLED screen. I have an OLED TV, and I know how nice OLED looks, but this does its job for me, and I feel like you don't really need that OLED. That's just me, though. Like, you could differ. And just last couple things I want to touch on my enjoyment of the Switch 2. The first thing of the last two is the GameCube games. Having the GameCube on the Switch Online. We got Wind Waker, and I played I put more time in Wind Waker on the Switch 2 than I did for Mario Kart. And then Mario Strikers, Soul Calibur 2, we got Chibi Robot coming. I'm missing one. There's one. Oh, F-Zero. So we had some pretty fun heavy hitters out there, and I like that Wind Waker and Chibi Robot. And also Mario Superstar Strikers were some of the first games, because they're some of the more expensive GameCube games to get. So to have them in the GameCube library for just people who want to play them, that's phenomenal. I'm glad Nintendo did that, and I hope with the games that they can get, because some of them are third-party games, but kind of stick to that. Like, give us some of the fun classics like your Mario Sunshines, Animal Crossing, things like that, but also give us some of those like hidden gem rare games that if I wanted to go buy, like Eternal Darkness would be great, guys. If I wanted to go buy, I'd have to go spend like $80, $90, $100, $200. Twin Snakes would be also great too. Work that out with Konami, please. That would be phenomenal if Nintendo did that. Give us some like classic games that we all want to play that are probably common that you can buy if you have a GameCube, but also give us, the fun, rare gems that would cost us a couple $100 to buy ourselves. And then lastly, I kind of touched on this earlier in the video, just playing my Switch 1 games, because there's not a lot of Switch 2 games to play on the system. That honestly, the ones that I would want to get, I already either own or played and beaten on my Xbox or my PlayStation. So buying those again just to play on the Switch, doesn't make that much sense to me. And some of the ones that I own digitally, I can play on my Legion Go if I want to play in handheld mode, kind of thing like that. But yeah, playing like my backlog of Switch 1 games, and maybe I'll edit in my current backlog right now. But having those on there, and just being able to play them on the Switch 2 on the more powerful system, where some of them have free upgrades or upgrades to where the frame rate runs better, the sound's better, the graphics are slightly tweaked and upgraded, kind of thing. That's fantastic. And again, just playing it on the bigger screen, and I'm going to power this on again. The bezel is so much smaller on this than the original Switch. I don't even have to turn it on. You can just clearly see that bezel and the watermarks on this. So just, especially at the top and bottom of the screens, like the side bezels are a little bit bigger. They might be about the same as the Switch, but the thinner ones at the top and bottom are the ones I care more about. And so just having the thinner bezel, the larger screen, the better sound, and in some cases better frame rate for the Switch 1 games that I'm playing through again. Though technically that's a Super Nintendo game I'm playing through again, or that were on my backlog that I'm playing. I do like having that there. And just kind of like, speaking of like Switch 1 games, Switch 2 games, I did pre-order Final Fantasy Tactics. I pre-ordered the Switch 1 version before they even announced the Switch 2. But after they announced the Switch 2 version and then they confirmed it was going to be a game key card, I kept my Switch 1 pre-order because it will get the free upgrade. So I will have the game on the cart. I don't have to download anything. And because I'm a physical gamer, I got my real physical game. And then, I said I'd talk about game key cards. And that's kind of the last thing I touch upon. I think one thing Nintendo needs to do is they need to get with the manufacturer of their cards, and they gotta say, hey, we need smaller cards. Because I get why publishers don't want to buy these cards if their game's only like 10 gigabytes. Why would you want to buy a 64 gigabyte card when it's going to cost you? I think the estimates I've seen is like $15 to $17. Why would you spend that as an added cost that will either eat into your profits or you have to charge more for the game? Why would you do that when you can get the really cheap game key card to satisfy some of those physical gamers kind of thing? So I think Nintendo definitely needs to do that, because if I'm being 100% honest, if I'm being honest, I don't mind the game key card, because I did a whole video about that where kind of basically like our PS5 and our Xbox Series X discs are game key cards, because you could download just about the whole game to your system anyways. So it's really no different. Doesn't matter if the whole game or not the whole game is on the disc. And more these days, a lot of our discs don't have the whole game on there. I still have to download it to my system. So I mean, it's kind of the same thing. But if I've downloaded it to my system, I still can't play it directly from my system. I need to insert the disc, even though the entire game's on the system, which is basically kind of how the game key card works, except you're not downloading it from the card, you're downloading it from the internet. So it's kind of the same thing. But honestly, what bugs me and kind of stops me from buying it is the big, stupid game key card label on there. I just think it's ugly. And I get it, they want to bring it to people's attention so no one can say, oh, you didn't tell me. So they have the big banner there so you can't miss it. I just wish it was less noticeable. Like maybe a box, kind of like the ESRB rating, instead of a whole banner across the bottom. And then maybe you have the game key card symbol on the front and then the whole banner on the back explaining what a game key card is, kind of thing like that. Because to me, I'm big on box art. I appreciate good box art, and I hate when it's ruined by unnecessary banners. Like I always hate like the platinum hits or Nintendo's greatest hits, where they have like the Nintendo one had the big yellow banner, or the Xbox with the platinum hits. It's like the box art is shrunken and it's a big platinum border around it. Can't remember what Sony did because my PlayStation 2 died before there were really any greatest hits games out there. And that kind of like made me like dislike Sony for a while, which is why Sony's always been my number 3 when it comes to systems. I don't do the console war thing like that. But if I can get a game on one of my other systems, even if it might run a little bit better on my PlayStation 5, I'll buy it for my Xbox. Kind of thing like that, because I still hold that tiny little bit of grudge against Sony for when the laser my PS2 died. And Sony was like, yep, that'll be $150 to fix it. And I think, the PlayStation 2 retail was $299 at the time. And this only happened like, I'm going to say less than a year into me owning the system. And then later they recognized after I'd gotten rid of my PlayStation 2, like a couple months later, they recognized it was a problem and they, fixed it for free. So I've held that little bit of grudge there. But I'm rambling there. So yeah, Nintendo with the key cards, like I kind of wish it was just like a smaller box art, because that's where it bugs me. It's not so much the game key card, it's the way the box art looks more than anything. But I have said before, if it would come down to getting a game key card and just downloading the game, I'm probably just going to download the game, so I don't have to switch out carts. I can go from, like, I've got Final Fantasy on the cart. I can go from playing Final Fantasy to, let's just say Tactics didn't come out on the Switch one. My only choice was the key card. I could just download Final Fantasy Tactics. I could play 6 or 4 or 5 or 3 or 2 or 1 because it's the whole pixel collection. And then just go plain Tactics if I want to switch it up, kind of thing like that. Because that is the nice thing about digital games. You don't have to change out cards. You don't have to change out disc. Home menu, pick your game, and you can play it. So that's 2 months in with the Switch 2, and I am still happy with it. I've enjoyed it very much. $450 for the system. Well, $500 because I got the bundle, but I'm just gonna say $450 for the system. I feel it's worth it. I feel I'm getting my money's worth. I play it more than I play my PS5. That not total, but I barely touch my PS5 anymore, and I've been playing it. I've been playing my Switch 2 a lot more than I've been playing my Xbox. I've been playing my GameCube and my Dreamcast more than the other two systems too lately. But yeah, just when I've been playing a modern system, I've chose to play games on my Switch 2 instead of playing other games on my other modern systems because, again, it's got that handheld thing. I can kick back and relax, things like that. And if you want to bring up the PlayStation Portal, I owned one, almost never used it because, again, I don't use my PlayStation 5 that much. I just don't. Like, when an exclusive comes out that I like God of War or Spider-Man 2, I play it and then I'm done, kind of thing like that. So it's just kind of one of those things that there's not really games that I seek out on my PlayStation 5. And like I said, I prefer the Xbox controller and the Xbox ecosystem. So generally speaking, if it's a third-party game, especially if it's a Game Pass game, I will get it from my Xbox. But yeah, I prefer playing on my Xbox over my PlayStation. It's a preference, not a console war thing. For the longest time, I've always preferred the Xbox controller over the PlayStation controller. Though I will say the DualSense controller is awesome. But I'm rambling again. Switch 2, loving it. I do wish there were more games for it, but that's just kind of the thing with the new system. You got to wait for the games. I can't wait for more third-party games to come out that I haven't played yet because, like I said, that's been kind of the downside. All these third-party games I've played and I've beaten most of them, and the ones I didn't beat, they just didn't stick with me, so I didn't stick through them to beat them. So I think Elden Ring, I've yet to get on that train. When that finally comes out for the Switch 2, I might be picking that up. And the Bloods, is that what the other FromSoft game? It's something, Dusk Bloods, I think is what it's called. I'll probably be picking that game up when it comes out for the Switch. Kirby Air Riders, not gonna get probably. I have Kirby Air Ride for my GameCube, and I've never been a fan. Like, it was cool at first, but then I was just like, it is what it is. So looking forward to more Switch games coming out. Can't wait for Metroid Prime 4 and just see what else is coming in the new year, kind of thing like that. So yeah, I'm happy with my Switch 2. If you own a Switch 2, I hope you're happy with it. If you've passed on the Switch 2 because it just didn't ring your bell, I mean, that's fine too. No one has to buy a system. But if you're interested in it and you were waiting for that killer app, I would say Donkey Kong. If you like 3D platformers, I should preface it with that because my buddy Devin hates Donkey Kong Bonanza. He pre-ordered it. He's not a fan of it. His son loves it though. But yeah, if you like 3D platformers, this is going up there with one of my favorites. I don't know if I'll ever do like a top 10 3D platformer list, but I'd say easily, just thinking off the top of my head, this is top 3, top 2. It could be number 1. It could dethrone Mario 64, which is still my favorite 3D platformer, but time will tell. It could be recency bias, kind of thing like that. So I feel that's kind of the killer app to get right now for it if you're not a Mario Kart person. I think that is definitely an awesome game for it, and obviously you can only play it on the Switch too. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and as always, I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.